All right. Hey, guys. Welcome for another episode of Viola Talks. I'm Miss Mandy from Upstate Suzuki Academy in South Carolina, and I am here to talk about the viola. So we'll wait just a minute. Weather has been crazy here. I almost thought I wasn't going to be able to do this tonight because we had no power all day, but luckily the power came back on. And so we are good to go. And I am so excited about tonight's episode. I have a ton of information for you. While we give everybody a minute to join us, I wanted to remind you to like and subscribe. Go ahead and hit those buttons underneath for lots of great stuff from Upstate Suzuki Academy. And I am going to give you a little sneak peek. We are starting a membership on my website, upstatesuzukiacademy.com. That will be live on Friday this week. So if you want to take a look over there, we have free membership, which will give you access to the blog and some free goodies every month. There'll be free handouts and printables. And once a week, there'll be an email newsletter. So that's with the free membership. And then we have our basic membership for $49 a month. So these live videos will only be available for 4 weeks after they air. And then they'll move over to my website where you'll get access to a handout to go along with unlimited access to the video. There will also be some courses included as I build them, and some free courses as well if you have a free membership. So I'd love to get some feedback. Let me know what kinds of things you want to see, what kind of courses you would like to see, and what kind of topics you'd like to see on the Viola Talks here. So let's go ahead and get started. Sorry, I forgot to get my little outline set up here. So today we're talking about shifting, all right? And there's a lot of confusion and terror about shifting on the violin and the viola. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today goes along with both the violin and viola, but of course I will be specifically addressing the viola. So I'm going to actually start here with a tenor banjo. And 2 reasons. Number one, it's tuned the same as the viola. It has 4 strings. It's also called a plectrum banjo. But I wanted to demonstrate with the fret marks what I'm going to start off by talking about. So when we learn to play the viola, we have finger tapes from our teachers on where to put our fingers. And we learn to put our fingers down in a pattern somewhat like this, okay? So this is first position. Now, the reason I use a fretted instrument to demonstrate this is because we don't have frets on the viola, but we have these imaginary places where there are notes that we don't put our fingers, okay? Those are half steps. So those are important when we're deciding if we need to shift and how far we have to shift. All right. So what is shifting? Shifting is when we move our hand up or down the fingerboard. Okay. So I'm going to trade out my tenor banjo here for my viola, and I will show you what I'm talking about. So we have our first position that we learn here with our finger tapes at the very beginning. All right. So after we have some experience and some practice, we shift our hands up to higher positions. All right. And we have established positions that we're going to go over a little bit today, but I'll be doing some live episodes in more detail on each of the positions later on. So what do we want to look for when we're shifting? So first of all, we want to make sure that we have a strong established first position finger pattern. All right. Your fingers know where they need to go in your home base finger pattern like this. We're going to talk about finger patterns in the next couple of weeks as well. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, just bear with me. And you also have a nice relaxed thumb over here on this side and good posture that's holding your instrument nice and high on your shoulder so that your thumb is free, because your thumb has to go with your fingers. Okay. Now, We do have extensions on the viola, all right? So an extension is when your hand doesn't really move, but your finger maybe pulls back a half a step, or your pinky might reach up a half a step. Oops, sorry. Your pinky might reach up a half a step. You see how my pinky just kind of inched up there? But my thumb stayed in the home position, all right? So that's an extension. And we use those from time to time. But typically, especially on a full-size viola, the bigger the viola, the more you want to include shifts rather than extensions. So why do you think we might shift? Or you might ask me, why do we want to shift? Well, we can shift. We shift for extending our range, especially on the A string. All right. So if I'm playing a D scale, let's say, and now I'm topped out. Okay, I can go to E, but I can't really do any more unless I shift my hand. So now I can go all the way up there by shifting my hand. All right, now you may have noticed in this higher position up here, my thumb stayed back here at the base of the neck. All right, and that's appropriate posture and appropriate hand shape for shifting in the higher positions. But again, we'll get to that in a minute. So we also might do it for convenience. I was recently playing, and I honestly don't remember what piece it was. I've done it in many different pieces, but it's not uncommon for violas to have what I like to call noodly bits. They're just kind of undercurrents of alternating notes, okay? So if I'm tasked with playing, for example, alternating B on the G string to the open D string note, I don't want to be sitting in the orchestra going, right? First of all, it's uneven, it's inconsistent, and the tone quality of the notes is different. Now, I can use my fourth finger if I want to. And that's not too bad, but that's difficult because the fourth finger is the weakest finger, okay? So the most comfortable way I can do it is if I shift. Now you can see I'm using my first and third finger. And while I am still using my second and fourth finger for that second pattern there, the distance is smaller when it's shifted, so it's a little bit more comfortable. So convenience is one of the reasons that we might use shifting. So we reduce string crossings when we do that. I'm sorry, my notes are way over here. I apologize for looking off screen so much. So another reason that we might do it is for tone quality. All right, I kind of touched on this already a second ago, because if I'm doing that, right, my tone quality on the D string is different than on the B string. So my tone quality stays consistent if I stay on the same string. Right? So one example of that is if we're playing like Hungarian dance, what is it, number 3, number 4, the famous one by Liszt. Right? So if I do that all on the G string, we get this nice warm tone there. But if I have to go to the other strings, right, the D string has a great sound quality by itself, but it's different than the G string, and it kind of interrupts what our brain is hearing. All right, so that's an artistic choice. So we might have a technical reason for doing it, we might have an artistic reason for doing it, and we might have an efficient reason for doing it. All right. Good. So I kind of already touched on the next thing on my outline, and that's how to shift. So remember, we're going to start with making sure that we have a nice solid posture as a habit. So pull up in the rib cage. I was talking to some students earlier this week, and I told them keep a little ball of energy right here at the base of your rib cage. All right, and just keep that sucked in and keep all of your movements and all of your energy centered from there. Make sure that your instrument is nice and high up on your shoulder and your left hand is relaxed. If you're squeezing with your fingers or with your thumb, you can see my thumb is bent there and you can see the tension in my arm. I can't shift, okay? My hand just won't go. It's locked in. But if I'm nice and relaxed, I can slide my fingers up the strings All right, so that's actually a great warm-up exercise when you're getting ready to shift or when you know you're going to be doing a lot of shifting in your playing. Even if you already know how to shift, this is a great warm-up. So slide your fingers gently and slowly up the string as far as you can reach, and then go back down. And slowly up the string and go back down. And then you can try it on a different string. Go up and down. And you want to keep your thumb with your first two fingers as far as it can go, and then your fingers go on and then come back. And that gives you an idea of what the whole process should feel like. You can also practice that going in between the strings. That just gives you a different tactical feel, a different kinesthetic feeling on your fingers, okay? And it helps you practice your tension. So the thumb should stay with the hand all the way up to about fourth position. Once you get past fourth position, and we'll talk about that in more detail in a second, but once you get past fourth position, your thumb is going to stay here and might pull around, around under the bottom so that you can reach higher up on the strings. All right. On the viola, mostly, we're going to go on the high notes on the A string, possibly the D string for chords. So you see where my thumb is over here. Oops. Sorry. There we go. Camera's backwards. So my thumb over here is stretched out and my fingers are still relaxed and still curved. All right. And there's not a lot of tension here. I'm not like squeezing everything, right? You saw my hand kind of turned into a claw there where I started squeezing. But now I'm nice and relaxed. Everything is curved and smooth and fluid. Okay, so that's what you want to practice. That's what you want to aim for before you even start doing any shifting. All right, so what positions do we have? I already mentioned, we have first position. All right, that's your home position that you learned when you first started playing with your fingertips. Okay, now second position, third position is usually the next position that we learn. And that's going to go, your first finger is going to go where your third finger is. All right. So your whole hand is going to move here. And using that same home finger pattern. All right. So that note, I'm going to do this on the D string. Right. So that third finger note is G. And I'm now going to put my first finger on G. And using that same finger pattern, a whole step to A, half step to B flat, whole step to the fourth finger note, C natural. All right, that's my third position notes on the D string. Sticking with the D string, let's talk about second position. So second position isn't too difficult, and it's actually used quite a bit more on the viola than it is on the violin. But it can be confusing because if you remember from your next phase of first position fingerings, one of the first things we learn to change is that second finger. Is it going to be a whole step? Is it going to be a half step? Right? So when you're in second position, is your first finger going to be in the low second finger position or the high second finger position? Just like everything else, that's going to depend on your key signature. So you're going to want to practice it in both positions. All right. So if my first finger is starting in the low second finger position, that would be F. Still on the D string, right? So F. If my F is natural, then my G is going to be natural also most of the time. Then A flat, that might happen. Or A natural. I might have B flat. I might have B natural. All right, so you want to be comfortable with all of those possibilities. And again, I'll talk about that more when we talk about finger patterns and second position video in a few weeks. But just to get comfortable with second position, it doesn't really matter if you pick your F natural or your F sharp as your starting note. Just pick one of them and practice your regular home finger pattern where you have the half step between second and third finger. So that's our 2-3 finger pattern. Because you're just practicing your finger placement. All right, you want to practice it with blocked fingers. You see my fingers are all down. And you want to practice it with independent fingers, so one at a time. All right, it is also a good idea to practice with just that first finger down. Now my second finger is going to come up, but my first finger stays down and the third finger goes down. And then fourth finger. Because what happens a lot of times when you're playing in shifted positions is now your middle fingers or even your pinky is going to have to go to a different string, but you don't want to lose your bearing on where you are on the fingerboard. So by keeping that first finger anchored, that's a good practice. By keeping that first finger anchored, your hand doesn't lose. It's kind of like being out to sea, right? You need something to keep you anchored so that you don't get lost. All right, so the next position that's typically taught is going to be fourth position. All right, and that's going to put your first finger where your fourth finger usually goes. All right, so if I'm on the D string, that fourth finger note is my A. So my first finger is going to go there. All right, and you can see my thumb now has followed along. Keeping that same home finger pattern, I'm going to do a whole step to the B, half step to C, and a whole step to D. All right, and you should notice if you are past the first year of playing viola at all, this fourth finger here is your octave of your open D string. It is the same place as your octave harmonic. Okay, so again, if you are new to the viola and any of these things are completely new for you, that's totally okay. And you can come back and watch this video anytime. You can take notes of questions to ask your teacher, or you can just kind of file it away in your brain for when you get to it later. But all of these things are connected and all of these things are important. Whether you're at the beginning or whether you're years down your viola journey, all of these things fit together. All right, so after fourth position, right, we have fifth position. But because we only have 4 fingers on the fingerboard, right, our next starting place is going to be, again, a half step or a whole step above that fourth position starting place. Okay, so here's fourth position is my open A, and my fifth position is going to start, again, it depends on the key signature, but the next note above that. So I'm going to start fifth position today on B. And again, using that same home finger pattern. Now, something to note as you're practicing shifting up this high is that the further you go up the fingerboard, the closer your half steps are. Okay, so down here, notice my fingers are all stretched out nice and big here when I get to fifth position. Look at how close my fingers are. Okay, and my thumb is actually hooked underneath the neck here. All right. So I don't think I've ever seen sixth position noted in music. Just because once you get up to fifth position, you're kind of just reaching for the notes. The positions are so close together and the half steps are so close together that there is not really a lot of differentiation, especially on the violin because this area is so small. But again, typically viola notes, I have not seen many pieces. Now that doesn't mean they're not out there, but most of the pieces that I've played, the highest we've gone is, no, what note is that? I think that's an E. Oh, here we go. That's a D, high D. And that's 2 octaves above my open D string. Okay. Occasionally I have an E flat or an E. Again, sometimes that's just like in opera stuff or sound effects. Maybe like a sustained note at a big moment in a concerto, but we don't really do a lot of business up in those higher positions. Because one of the things we love about the viola is that nice low mellow range down here. So I personally, as a violist, tend to prefer pieces that focus more on this low range stuff and not quite so much on the stuff up here in the violin range. So, but we go from fifth position to seventh position then. All right. So if our fifth position first note is B, the next note is C, that would be sixth position. So D, the octave, that's our seventh position. Okay, so seventh position, your first finger goes an octave above your open string. All right, and again, notice how close my fingers are. That's the 2-3 finger pattern where I have a half step between the middle two fingers and a whole step to the other fingers. Okay. All righty, now let's talk about how we practice shifts, okay? So one of the things I was thinking about this week as I was trying to decide what I wanted to talk about is that there are so many details for music teachers, for musicians to learn, just in general, okay? So it's hard for music teachers in the 30 minutes we get with our students every week. It's really difficult for us to impart everything that's connected. We can only give you little bits at a time, and that's okay. It's, you know, it's part of the student's journey to explore these things on your own. And we try to make those connections, but sometimes so much time goes between when we've talked about these things that the connection is missed. And that's okay too. Again, that's part of the journey. But I would like to talk about these things in a more connected way to help you make those connections sooner. Because some of these things, it took me 20 years to make the connection. And I would have loved to have made it, you know, about 15 years earlier. So I'm glad that I introduced the shifted positions to you, but I also want to talk about the types of shifts that you're going to do and how to practice them. Because if you can practice them isolated up front, when you come across them in your music, they'll make sense and you'll be able to accomplish them a little bit sooner. So I learned a lot of shifting just as I needed it. When I needed it for a particular concerto, or when I wanted to apply it to a piece in a symphony or an opera or something like that. And that's great. But if I had practiced it a little more isolated from the beginning, I think it would have been easier to apply and a little less confusing and less terrifying, okay? And I might have been ready to use it in more places. Like there are a lot of places I probably could have used it that I didn't. So let's talk about ways that you can practice shifting so that you're ready for it when you come across it in music. So there are 3 times or 3 ways that you'll shift. All right. Sometimes the music will give you an opportunity to play an open string and shift, and then be ready to put your finger down for the next note, right? So one of the ways that you can practice that is play the open string, play whatever note you're going to shift to, and then play the open string and do your shift while you're playing the open string, and then put your finger down. All right, and then do it again. Okay. And that just teaches your hand where to go. Like, and if you're thinking instead of like open string, first finger, open string, third finger, right? Don't think that. Think about what you're doing, right? So open string, third position. Nailed it, right? So if you do that 15, 20 times a day for a week, maybe 2 weeks, you'll nail it every time after that. All right. So especially when you learn a new position, this is a great exercise to get your hand acclimated to where exactly you need to go. And doing it in first position first trains your ear as to what it's supposed to sound like so that your ear knows if you made it or not. All right. So let's try that in fourth position real quick. So we do the open string, fourth finger A. Right? You got to nail that first. So open string, fourth finger A. Now open string and shift. And now first finger down on A, right? And how do we know that we hit the A? Because we have that resonance with the open A string. Right? Okay, so that's one way that we shift and one way that we can practice it to be ready when it comes up. All right. Now, one of the more common shifts that we prefer while we're playing is what we call same finger shifts, okay? So in that case, we're going to go from the first finger to the first finger. All right. So again, you want to acclimate your ear as to what it's supposed to sound like. So first finger E, then your G note with the third finger, then go back to first finger and freeze your bow, shift, and play the note, hopefully in the right pitch. All right. So once you've got that, then you can also add other fingers and other finger patterns. Okay. So first finger shift. Okay. That's just one example. Right? So we like 4-note patterns because 4 is easy to count, easy to keep track of with our brain and our body while we're concentrating on other things. So I actually just picked, a random pattern there, but you can do any pattern that you want to as long as you shift on the same finger. Okay. So the next part of that, and you can do that with any position, right? So that was to third position. All right, I used a different finger pattern there. Not sure why my brain just did that, but you saw that I shifted to second position. Okay. You can do it to fourth position. So first finger, right? That's what I want my note to sound like. So now when I shift, all right, I was a little flat there. But you get the idea. And you can do it to fifth position. You can do it to sixth and seventh. All right. So the next step then is to be able to shift from your first finger to a different finger. And there's actually a couple of steps in practicing that. And again, I'll go much slower and we'll go into more detail in the next few weeks when we talk about each of the positions by themselves. But again, just a preview for anybody who already knows shifting and wants to give it a try at home in your practice. So the slow, what am I trying to say? I'm sorry. The slow-mo version of doing this exercise, you're going to shift on the same finger and slur that, okay? So shift. All right, just for an example. But then the second version, all right, so I landed on the second finger. So shift, and then put the second finger down. All right. So the slow motion version, I do it as a slurred note. And then the regular version, I wait till the very last second. Okay, does that make sense? Again, I'll go much slower on the future video when we talk about shifting specific positions and specific exercises you can do. But that's another thing to practice. And of course, not just the second finger. We shift to the third finger, to the fourth finger as well. All right. So that pretty much wraps up my overview of shifting. All right. Like I said, I know I covered a lot of information. I warned you at the beginning that I was going to. And I hope you had a chance to write down some notes. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of my other videos or notifications. And if you get a chance, go ahead and head over to my website, upstatesuzukiacademy.com, and you can subscribe to the mailing list there so you'll get notified about upcoming videos. But you can also do a free membership to get started so that you can get on the weekly newsletter and find out all about what's going on at Upstate Suzuki Academy. So let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to email me or comment on the video below. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. All right. Thanks. Have a good one.